Okay, you beautiful New Zealanders. Well, we're in for a bit of a treat tonight. I'm going to expand on what I talked about yesterday, which was that Chris Luxon was a activist. And I just want to start with a little bit of a summary of yesterday's video so that we can progress successfully through this video. So here's Chris, our activist Prime Minister. From part one of this video series on Chris Luxon, that's yesterday's video, the following is a summary of Chris's activist understanding of the treaty, which he revealed in this interview with Jack Tame. 1. He believes that the Maori phrase Tino Rangatiratanga in Article 2 means authority, the same interpretation as Maori activists. It does not mean authority, it means possession or ownership. So Chris has really got that wrong. Secondly, Chris believes that the Maori word taonga in Article 2 means treasures, the same interpretation as activists. Now, I'm going to expand on that tonight in this video to give you detail about what happened with that word. It does not mean treasures. It means property or simply chattels. Actually, strictly, it means property procured by the spear. Chris also believes that the treaty is a partnership. This is what all radical Maori activists believe too. So where is Chris and radical Maori activists getting the idea that the treaty is a partnership? They get it by twisting and contorting a throwaway comment by Justice Robin Cook in 1987. He said that the treaty was akin to a partnership. He did not say it was a partnership, and nor was it a partnership. Chris does not get this. Brilliant Judge Anthony Willy has examined what Justice Cook said when he said the treaty was akin to a partnership. Anthony has pulled apart Cook's judgment with the precision of a surgeon. He's amazing. In the next video, I will go through what Justice Anthony Willy said about the treaty not being a partnership. Believe me, it's a stellar analysis. It's honestly stunning what Justice Anthony Willy has written about the whole concept of partnership in the treaty. So in today's video, I'm going to repeat the ending of yesterday's video because I want you to get the seriousness of our situation in New Zealand. So let's crack into it. Enjoy tonight's video, and I'll see you tomorrow.
How familiar are you with the Treaty of Waitangi?
I'm not a treaty expert. I certainly wouldn't be as culturally fluent and literate as you are. But I really, I've been trying to get into that space even through my New Zealand journey. And
Chris should really be an expert in the treaty, not a PhD, but I believe that all politicians should have a compulsory course on the treaty, not run by activist scholars and people who've been leaned on and paid out to keep the narrative going. But there are some scholars in this country, John Robinson, Bruce Moon, who would be brilliant at taking all politicians through courses on the treaty, because we're talking about billions of dollars being paid out. And if it's being paid out on half-ass knowledge and understanding, and you're at the mercy of the Waitangi Tribunal, then we've got no hope. We're going to be just throwing money away. We're going to be just throwing money away. Not knowing whether we're doing the right thing or not, just going on intuition and gut feeling. No, that's not good enough.
the places.
You understand the differences between the different articles?
Yes, I do. Yeah, so Article 1, sovereignty. Article 2, authority over Tonga and treasures. And Article 3, really ensuring equality.
Okay, there we go. Okay, there's another word of interest here which Chris Luxon is using. And I want to just explain this to you because it's another activist interpretation of the treaty that Chris is holding. The Queen of England, this is Article 2, first paragraph. The Queen of England confirms and guarantees to the chiefs and the tribes and to all the people of New Zealand the possession of their lands, dwellings, and all their property. Now we know the word possession there is Tino Rangatiratanga. But there's another word here, and it's the word property that I have put in red. I want to discuss this with you. In Maori, this word is taonga. That word property is taonga. Historian Bruce Moon says the word has an interesting history. In 1820, while assisting Kendall and Lee of Cambridge in compiling the first Maori dictionary, Hongi Hika had defined it as property procured by the spear, teo. In an appeal for protection by 13 Ngāpuhi chiefs to King William in 1831, they said, that's the 13 Ngāpuhi chiefs, quote, "We are people without possessions. We have nothing but timber, flax, pork, and potatoes." Isn't that interesting? And their word for possessions was taonga. So that was coming from Ngāpuhi themselves, the way they used that word. It did not mean treasures. Now I'll show you how that word has been turned into treasures by Maori activists. This is the word taonga. On the left there is the guy called Hugh Carfaru. He's an activist. In 1989, activist Hugh Carfaru fraudulently reinterpreted Tonga to mean treasures, not property procured by the spear. He changed all that. And so he changed it into treasures. That is to say, anything Maori today in modern New Zealand treasure. Thus, the floodgates of fraud and corruption just opened. When the treaty writers translated property into Tonga, they were really meaning what we today would describe as household chattels. That is all. But Chris Luxon is using Hugh Carfaru's fraudulent understanding of Tonga. And Chris, he might know that he's doing it, but I suspect he doesn't, because he has been brainwashed and he's under the influence of heavy propaganda and he's going with it. He's got Article 1 right. So what's the implications for Chris Luxon and the National Party if they swap out property for treasures? What's the implications for the whole of New Zealand? Well, it ought to be obvious to us all. Treasures is broad and vague and undefinable. This is exactly what the activists wanted. They can lay claim to anything now. The water, the rivers, the mountains, the airwaves, radio waves, minerals on the ground and under the ground, the beaches, the oceans, literally anything. Anything they treasure or want. So Chris has exposed the country to fraud and corruption. Because he's an activist prime minister, everybody's got to think like Chris has got to think inside that National Party, inside the cabinet, inside the heads of those MPs. So this is a really serious departure from, if you like, treaty orthodoxy that Chris has taken on here, and he's gone straight into the realm of the activists and joined in with them, and it's serious. Then he said, with Article 2, what's that about? He said it's about authority. Now that's the activist understanding of Tino Rangatiratanga, which we've been talking about. Absolute sovereignty or authority, they switch them out. But Chris Luxon is now carrying an activist understanding of Tino Rangatiratanga. So Chris is carrying an activist understanding of Article 2. Then he says that Article 3 is about equality. He says it's about equality.
The issue, of course, is the interpretation of those articles.
Okay, so he's given us, he says, yes, I can tell you what the articles are all about, but now it's the interpretation of the articles, of course. It's exactly how activists think. Do you know what? The treaty is unbelievably simple to understand. If you got the final English draft, and then which is a mirror image of the treaty in Maori, they're absolutely the same except for the date and the insertion of the word Maori into Article 3 last minute by Hobson and Williams on the 5th of February, just before they walked into the tent, they put that word in, the word Maori, into Article 3. It's unbelievably simple. What's happened is the activists have made it complicated, Chris. They've screwed it over and butchered it and manipulated it, played around with it, so much so that it's now nothing like what it was in 1840. And Chris Luxon has just been absolutely sucked in by that. And he now says what all the activists say, it's open to interpretation. No, Chris. It's very, very clear.
And sort of how they, the Treaty of Waitangi Te Treaty, as to how we all take different views on that.
So what does Tino Rangatiratanga mean to you?
Well, it doesn't mean co-governance to me. It means actually partnership.
Okay, so he says Tino Rangatiratanga means partnership. Well, not even the activists believe that. Not even the British and the chiefs in 1840 believe that. Nobody believes that, except National Party and Chris Luxon. So this is by far the most serious sort of infringement or penalty or red card that we would give Chris Luxon, the Prime Minister, as an activist, is that he believes the treaty is a partnership. Now, this is taking serious to a whole new level. Hardcore Maori activists believe the same thing. They believe that the treaty is a partnership too. But the treaty is not a partnership. Activists get the idea that the treaty is a partnership not from Tino Rangatiratanga, but by fraudulently twisting the ruling of Justice Cook in 1987. Cook said the treaty was akin to a partnership. He did not say it was a partnership, and nor was it a partnership. Activists stretched what Cook said, and poof, the treaty became a partnership. And Chris has swallowed that hook, line, and sinker. So Chris has become one of those activists who've followed this fraudulent line of thinking as a result of Justice Cook's ruling. So in the next video, I'm going to dive into Justice Cook's ruling and really show you that, and show you that what I'm saying here is absolutely true. So Again, this is a serious departure from treaty orthodoxy that our Prime Minister is carrying. He's been tarred with the activist brush. And they've got him.
Maori having authority over their Tonga and their treasure and their land.
The absolute authority over their land. That is the classic activist understanding of Tino Rangatiratanga. So he's very mixed up here.
So I think, we are waiting for the Waitangi Tribunal around Part 1, Part 2 and Ngāpuhi as to whether they ceded sovereignty or not.
Oh my goodness. Chris is saying he's waiting for the Waitangi Tribunal, which is an activist rat's nest. You should read the article by Michael Basset, who was on the tribunal for 10 years. And what he says, it's become an activist stronghold. Can anybody challenge the tribunal's understanding of the treaty? No. Can anybody challenge their understanding of history? No. Can anybody pull them up for activist spin and misinterpretation of the treaty? No. And Chris says we're just waiting on them to tell us whether to pay out billions to Maori in Northland based on an activist understanding of the treaty, based on the Waitangi Tribunal. I'm just astounded with what Chris has just said here. He obviously doesn't know his history at all. 240 Ngāpuhi chiefs signed the treaty. 540 around the country signed in total. 240 were Ngāpuhi chiefs of those 540. They all signed off on ceding sovereignty. They were overjoyed to do it. They wanted to become British citizens. They wanted the British to set up a parliament, and it was their desire. And yet Chris is going to overrule that, going on a dodgy as hell Waitangi Tribunal report that says Maori chiefs did not cede sovereignty. How do you do that? How do you trash them? How do you dishonour them so easily in that way, and then excuse it? Blame it on the Waitangi Tribunal. They told me to do it. Is that what you're going to do, Chris? I mean, really? This is insane. This is insanity. This is our Prime Minister.
As to how we ultimately are interpreting the treaty. And within New Zealand, and again, I'm not a treaty scholar by any stretch, I respect people who are, that's the tension that sits there.
So you don't believe in co-governance?
No, I don't think the treaty is talking about, I think the way it's being represented to New Zealanders as a separate system, and I think we fundamentally need to be very proud of our bicultural, founding and starting point, and acknowledge a special place for tangata whenua.
Okay, he says we need to acknowledge a special place for tangata whenua, and yet he said Article 3 was about equality. So if you're giving a special place to tangata whenua, then you're not into equality. You're not preaching equality. You're preaching separatism and racism and apartheid, where you give one cultural group out of 160 a special place in the country. That's not what happened at Waitangi, Chris. At Waitangi, everybody was made British citizens, everybody was levelled, and everybody was made the same. That's true equality. Now you're changing that. You see, the problem we have is that if you give Maori a special place in the country, give them special privileges, give them special status, then you're going against the treaty. You're breaching the treaty. Because the treaty was absolutely clear that all Maori were to be made British citizens, and they were made British citizens, the same as everybody else who was in the country. And so, Chris, you're breaching the treaty. How come nobody's pulling them up about this? If you make Maori a special group in New Zealand out of the 160 cultures, you are breaching the treaty, Chris Luxon. Come on, Chris. Get it together. But that's what's there, Chris. Come on. It's what's in his heart. Okay, I think we've seen enough. You can see the whole video. I'll put the link to the actual video, the whole video, in the description so you can see it without my commentary and look at it for yourself. So unfortunately, what you have here is an activist Prime Minister. And he may not be an activist in the sense of, out there on the streets with Waititi, but he's a closet activist, and I don't think Chris even knows that he is. I don't think he realizes how tarred with the brush he's been, how under the influence of activist propaganda he has succumbed, because his understanding of the treaty is off the charts. and he's the Prime Minister. Now, you put this together, if you have Tama Potaka, who is an out-and-out activist, put him together with Chris Luxon, who's got that sort of leanings towards Maorification and co-governance, even though he says he's not into co-governance. I think he's just avoiding a hot potato, but really he is, and he definitely is. I mean, you have a look at the, the fast track bill that's all got iwi all through it. That's one they've just put together. The abolition of Maori wards, they can't be activated till 2028. And the 49 bullet points that they had in their first quarter, there's only 3 of them have to do with eliminating race-based legislation. And then the next 36, I think it was, and he has 1. Chris is not into stopping all this. The Maori freight train. He's not into pulling out all race-based legislation. He's not interested in restoring the name of New Zealand. He's not interested in out all the Treaty of Waitangi clauses from all the legislation. He's not interested in turning all the government departments back to English names. He's not interested in restoring English. None of this. He's keeping it all going. He's keeping it all going. We thought we were going to stop all this when we put a National Party in. How wrong we were. Well, I guess the public of New Zealand have been sucked in before with Ardern. We never thought it could happen again. Never. Ardern never told the country what she was going to do in 2017 and 2020. She didn't campaign on what she went on to do. She kept it quiet. She was tricky. She was secret. She was devious. She was dishonest. Now, Chris Luxon is showing remarkable similarities here, because when he campaigned, I was watching him like a hawk. And he said, we're going to do the best for all New Zealanders. We're going to do the best for all New Zealanders. And he was remarkably quiet about what he was going to do to stamp out racism, apartheid, separatism, taking out race-based legislation. He didn't say anything about that. But now it's all come out. He's an activist. He's just following exactly what Ardern did to trick the New Zealand public. He's doing things today in his government that he did not campaign on. That is to say, furthering Maorification, furthering co-governance, and continuing with activist activities inside the government, albeit by stealth. I'm so sorry for New Zealand, This is a beautiful country. We should have equality. No apartheid, no racism, everybody being treated equally, one person, one vote. All votes of equal value. Everybody being treated exactly the same. All the 160 cultures. It's a sad thing listening to that interview with Chris. Please share this video with everyone everywhere. The mainstream media should be reporting on the issues I am raising in these videos, but they're not. Why aren't they? Well, they're corrupt. Why are they corrupt? They are collaborating with Maori activists, there's no doubt about that. In the final analysis, the people of New Zealand, that's us, have ultimate power, not the politicians. Did you know that? The people can kick out the people in power and they can put them into power. How are we going to do that? Well, awareness is the key to change. If enough people in New Zealand become aware of the issues I am raising, we can save this beautiful country. So share these videos everywhere so that come the next election, we can vote the right people in and kick out the people who are destroying New Zealand.